Hi, so my name is Alicia. I am studying at the University of Toronto. My program is a specialist in environmental science. I'm also taking a lot of health studies and courses that will lead me towards a medical degree.
My name is Mirzaagha, and I'm currently based in Toronto, where I'm studying at York University at Osgoode Hall, and I'm studying law there with a particular interest in international law. And Alicia and I are both here for the Commission on Sustainable Development. We've been privileged to come for the second year and see the two-year cycle in process. And we've been particularly involved with one of the 9 major groups, and that is the Major Group for Youth and Children. And our role in that major group has been very interesting, and it's definitely been a great learning process. I've also had the opportunity to sit in on some of the Women's Caucus meetings, so that's been really great.
So the Youth Caucus, which is one of the major groups, as Melody mentioned, is a really neat group of people. They can come from any NGO, they could also come from a government, and ideally come from all over the world. This is something that we're kind of struggling with because often it's a few countries that dominate, but a really neat initiative that's kind of in the pilot stage right now is engaging other youth who aren't able to attend the commission through virtual dialogue, and especially trying to engage Indigenous youth so that their input can be heard here. And so I guess working with the Children and Youth Major Group has been really interesting because the group is so open and kind of free. And so we work on drafting statements that can be presented at major group dialogues or can be presented for governments. And we work on coming up with principles that we think should be thought about and should be articulated and should be put into these policies that we're creating. And then we go about kind of helping others to learn about these principles by engaging with government delegates or asking them to put particular words or phrases in the text. And this year is really different from last year because our main objective is working on this text, whereas last year it was on giving statements. So with working on the text, it's been neat because the Youth Caucus points have really been getting into the text, and many governments are receptive to integrating them, and governments like Canada have actually asked us, please keep sending us language because it's really helpful. So for example, one amendment that was made is in the text this year. There was a portion about giving women land rights, but only according to customary laws. And the Youth Caucus, along with the Women's Caucus, didn't think that would make a lot of sense, seeing as in many countries it does not equate to empowerment of women at all. So we drafted some alternative language, and that was adopted in the text. So we're really happy about that.
Can you say a little bit more about the text that you're referring to?
Yeah, sure. So there was a conference just before the CSD that was called the IPM, and a text was drafted that then, during this CSD, all governments would work on changing or adding things to or taking things away, and then ideally at the end of the 2 weeks that text would be agreed to by all the governments and implemented as policies in their respective countries.
And it's a non-binding agreement,
Yeah.
so it's really trying to come to consensus about the language that's being used, and then using it kind of as a guideline in their work in sustainable development in the future.
Mm.
It's been interesting to be at the UN building and talking about the different endeavors that governments are going to be embarking on when they return to their respective countries, and then to go over the weekend on a trip to a number of urban farms in Brooklyn. And so we had this kind of international experience with people from all over the world that are coming together to talk about these local communities. And then luckily we had an opportunity to go to one of these local communities in Brooklyn and really see what's happening in the community. And in this particular part of the 3 locations that we went to in Brooklyn, there were areas that had very little access to fresh fruits and vegetables, food deserts, where people are having a really difficult time, coming up with healthy foods to eat. You have to take a bus and a train or something like that to get to somewhere to get just something as simple as fruits and vegetables. And so the young people in these communities are recognizing that this is a problem, and in collaboration with other people in the community, elders, other people who care about this issue and have recognized that this is an issue, they're really working together to provide a solution in their communities. And we went to these urban farms and had these young people speak to us about their work and the ways in which these urban farms have really changed their communities and their lives as individuals as well. And that was really moving, because the whole reason that we're all gathering at this building in New York is to try to come up with language that reflects the needs in the community. So I thought it was really wonderful to have that experience in the midst of all the discussions at the UN.
I also really enjoyed that tour that we had over the weekend, particularly because I'm working with a group of young people in Toronto, where I'm from, 12 to 15-year-olds, and they really want to create a community garden in our neighborhood, and they've taken it on as their project. So now they've collaborated with some friends from my university who are running a garden on our campus, and so they're learning throughout the summer how to run a garden, how to work on it by working on the university garden, and then hopefully over the next couple of years try to create a garden in our little circle of apartment buildings. So it was really cool to see other 12 to 16-year-olds presenting what they're already doing and learning about how it all works, and seeing how empowering it was for those young people to be really the people who were running the garden. One of the girls was like, yep, next year we're going to plant broccoli here, and it was totally up to her, and she was really, really happy to share with us about what they're doing. So that was also a highlight for me.
And also just how eloquently they spoke when they explained their work at the gardens, and how they really identified with the fact that they were providing a service to their communities. It was incredible to see that they had stepped up where there was a gap for this service in the community.
Another highlight for me from this CSD was noticing how much major groups are wanting to have a shared vision. So those major groups are NGOs, they're Indigenous peoples, they are youth, women, scientific community, business people, all kinds of people with very different views on these very broad issues of sustainable development. But the fact that they really want to come up with a shared vision was really inspiring to see. And one of the heads of the Women's Caucus was sharing with us that in one of the CSDs, all the major groups came together and came up with a combined statement that was 9 minutes long that they shared with governments that they all agreed to. And this year they felt it was a little hard to do that. But they definitely want to have at least a phrase that every single major group during the closing statement will be saying. And Melody's working on that phrase with a couple of the other youth. So that's been a really exciting trend for me to see that they want this shared vision. And I think because the will is there, it will happen.
Can you talk a little bit about, as youth delegates from the Baha'i international community, how you see your role as contributing in that respect?
In respect to bringing that shared vision?
In terms of representing the Baha'i international community in this process.
Do you want me to talk about that? Well, the Youth Caucus is really unique, because really what we're doing there is trying to contribute to this bigger process that's unfolding over these 2 weeks. And so as youth from the Baha'i international community, we're really trying to assist in facilitating this process, trying to be inclusive in our approach, and really trying to